Hi everyone, welcome back to the Green Room podcast with myself and Henry. Today we're joined by our friend and colleague Asma Sahawan. We've worked previously together on a consulting project, and Asma's got really interesting perspectives on sustainability. So Asma, welcome on.
Hi, I'm an associate consultant, technically just a consultant now that works in IBM Consulting. I've been here for just coming up to 2 years, but I did a placement year at IBM too, so I have about 3 years of experience.
A bit about you is that you have an interest in sustainability and you got involved a little bit at university and you're trying to still engage with it here in IBM, right?
Yeah, so back in second year, I did like a project on sustainability related to my careers division, and then got pulled into being the treasurer of our first sustainable society, which was really cool because we didn't really know what we were going to be doing. And really cool side note on that is that we ended up being installing a zero waste shop into our SU, which I think Sheffield was the first uni to do, but then we kind of just copied. But our uni was very much behind the times. Really sad that COVID then shut it down because it hit 3 months after we'd actually installed it, which is really annoying. But that was kind of how I got kickstarted on sustainability, and then came to IBM, and in my last 3 months of IBM started a project with a global oil and gas company on climate risk, transition risk. How do we transition from being a really carbon intense society and company to a lower carbon society and company? And then that's why I wanted to come back to IBM, do sustainable consulting, and kind of been doing projects here and there about ESG reporting, what frameworks are out there that we should be reporting on or other companies should be reporting on. And now I'm on a sustainability project implementing one of our products in Visi into another oil and gas company. You can tell where I've stayed.
And it's interesting you work with a couple of oil and gas companies because obviously their energy or their transition towards sustainable is a unique one in terms of the industry and market they're in. Do you have any insight into your opinions on the oil and gas industry within sustainability itself?
So it's complex because I think that they have to be the market leaders. I'm very much of the opinion that they aren't the big bads. They have to be the companies that drive that change because we can't do it as consumers. They are the ones raking in the millions and billions of dollars as we saw last year, and they need to be the ones that move us to being energy companies. Yeah, they need to be energy companies, not just oil and gas companies. And all of the companies are moving towards that. They are becoming. I think I joined a project and I said, "Oh, I'm really experienced in the oil and gas sector." They corrected me and was energy sector. And I was like, "You're right," because that is what it's turning into. They are all diversifying into renewable energy. They're diversifying into solar, hydro, biofuels. They are just diversifying in general. But we can't do it without oil and gas at the moment.
Yeah.
We need that oil and gas, as we saw after the war in Ukraine. It's a global commodity that we cannot.
Still reliant on.
Yeah, we are so reliant on it. So it's interesting, but I do think that the progress is still quite slow, especially in the oil and gas sector. It's a bit sad.
So you're a business consultant and
Yes.
you've managed to get the opportunity to work and implement technology that helps companies be more sustainable.
Yes.
Is that something that you've taken on personally to seek out those kinds of projects, or is it just naturally kind of introduce itself into your role, or is it something that you're actively seeking out?
I think it's something that you have to put the effort into. Consulting is very much who you know. It's annoying that it's just the old adage, it's who you know, not what you know. So especially when you first join as a consultant, you don't know very many people. Your network isn't very big. So I've had to go out there and do things like the Sustainability Practitioner Program, which is side projects. This isn't, they're helping out with BMPs or they're helping out with the sustainable team in the UK. And that's kind of led to sustainable projects. That's not necessarily how I got into it, and mine was a bit of a side, lateral move. Someone moved out of IBM, I saw that his role was up. I didn't go for it, but his manager reached out. So mine was a bit of a landed in my lap, but generally you need to put the work to work in sustainability. It's not just going to come to you. It's a new and growing area for IBM, which means that we don't have the number of projects coming in for it like we do with cloud. Like obviously cloud is a massive sector. We have so many projects of those coming in. We don't have that in sustainability. We need to, so as especially early professionals, we need to go out there and seek them, because people who are more like further into their career are going to see those opportunities, because all of those clients are saying that from public to oil and gas to whatever sector you work in, they're all saying we need a sustainable element in your project. They're all asking for what are your sustainability credentials. As early professionals, we don't see those bits. We see the delivery. So we need to go out there, and we have a program that's the SPP that helps people make those networking connections, and then hopefully leads into roles, which in the future it should. But you do. It's not just you gear your career towards it, and that's how it happens. It's that you have to do a lot more work to get to that point.
So it sounds very much like, obviously, as you just mentioned, you have to be quite proactive in seeking out jobs within sustainability and opportunities within sustainability. But you did mention, and the growing trend is companies becoming more sustainability and taking more interest in their strategies in sustainability. Do you think that inherently warrants a service line, like a IBM Consulting unique service line centered around sustainability, or is that something you can see happening in the future?
So I thought it was definitely needed. When I was on placement, we were looking into setting up a hub, which was the Sustainability and Climate Hub, based all around sustainability and the work that we are doing. And when I came back, I was more surprised that it didn't become its own practice or service line. But after talking to more senior professionals, I've realised that it doesn't need to be. It is so ingrained into every single thing that we do that it doesn't make sense for it to be a separate service line. We do finance supply chain transformation. It's embedded in that. It should be embedded in that. Customer transformation, there is a way to embed it into that. Talent transformation, that's green HR is becoming a massive thing right now. Cloud obviously is always going to be a massive, like sustainability is always going to be a massive thing. So it needs to be integrated across everything, regardless of which service line it is in. So it doesn't need to be its own one.
Interesting, very interesting. And yeah, I think it is a bit unique for us because we do very similar roles, but they're kind of slightly different in terms of we obviously have, or our incentive is to sell software that makes companies more sustainable, and yours is kind of on the back end of that, isn't it, to implement sustainability software solutions into business.
Opposite end of the cycle.
Yeah,
you're going and selling it.
Yeah, exactly.
We deliver it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you think are like the key differences between that, I want to say?
I think when you're looking at selling, the main point that your clients will be looking at is revenue. Like you talked about earlier, it's all about what is going to affect my bottom line. You've done the hard work of making them realize that this is what they need to invest in. And then we come in and actually have a look at, for example, with Invisi, okay, what data do you need? What data do you have? How can we pull that into Invisi? And how can we make your reporting as sound as possible to make sure that you are being as sustainable as possible, and that you identify your growth areas and your weaker points.
So on that, our discussions with our clients is motivate them to be sustainable from the standpoint of improved revenue and lower costs. How do you motivate your clients once they have the technology? How are they motivated to implement it to the best way they can in order to be more sustainable, essentially?
I think it comes down to reputation. A massive thing that consumers are looking at right now is how sustainable are companies. Like you've seen the Shell protesters that are around, like obviously Shell are being held to account, BP the same thing. So, and obviously any other oil and gas company, but those are just the two that come to mind because we're in the UK. They're all being held to account by reputation. So they are driven by, at that point after they've been sold the software, it is how can we publish our sustainability report so that we can show to our competitors and the rest of the industry that we are leading. And that is the main driver from what I've seen.
Just quickly, I want to touch on, there's quite a clear incentive to why a company would want to purchase a piece of software that makes them more sustainable or makes their reporting process easier. What do you think are the main drivers for companies who need assistance in implementing a sustainability strategy? Because obviously that's where consulting comes in. So where do you see particular industries, markets, or companies within those sectors kind of particularly needing like a sustainability consulting practice?
I think everyone's a bit lost. Like, there isn't one sustainability strategy that will work for everyone. It's even within a sector, it's not going to work for every single company in that sector. It really depends on the company itself. Like, you could be, if I'm going to go off oil and gas, you could be an international oil company, you could be a global oil company. Or you could be even more, international is global, international or a national, and then you've got smaller ones that will just be doing parts of the process. Each of those companies are going to have different requirements. So one sustainability strategy isn't just going to, it's not a one size fits all. It is very management consulting, and you have to go in, you have to assess what is currently happening and then steer so that you know what their output is and you steer and help them get to that point. But even like my current client, they're looking into changing their sustainability strategy because they don't think it's fitting where their vision wants to be. So I think it just depends on the client. It's really difficult to just say there is one answer to what is a sustainability strategy.
So we've had a number of conversations with clients about their ability to track sustainability through their supply chain and through their value chain and essentially their scope 3 emissions.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the majority of, or does your job include a lot of looking through company supply chains and helping them to visualize their sustainability footprint in that area? Because obviously it's one of the big challenges to effectively reporting your sustainability impact as a business.
Especially when they're not in charge of their supply chain. Like, if, for example, an oil and gas company, if they're in charge of everything from getting the oil to transporting to selling, they control that whole supply chain. But someone like Zara or Inditex aren't going to have visibility of all of their suppliers because they don't own that whole process.
Yeah.
They outsource it to a manufacturer who will make that clothing item. So I think there's a massive focus on that at the moment. Is for companies, I think it's the easiest place for them to start, because there's so much unknown in that supply chain. So there's any company that it could be a beverage, it could be clothing, it could be household items. They're all looking into their supply chain now to see what are their scope 3 emissions. So I think, obviously I'm not in those sectors, but that is a massive focus for a lot of those companies.
So we've spoken about a lot of really interesting things today, and Asma, we'd like to thank you very, very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate it. In terms of next steps, I think we want our whole kind of our intention for this podcast was for people to get involved and hear about sustainability stories. And to anyone who's watching who may work at IBM or has any questions on sustainability, especially in consulting, then Asma's a great person to reach out to. Her email will be below. But yeah, I think we just really wanted to start conversations, really. And
it's a big conversation to be started.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But one that needs to be had. So.
Yeah.
I think especially as early professionals, right?
Exactly.
We're a lot more concerned about it than other people, and we need to be driving the change that we want to see.
That's exactly it. So thank you very much for watching.
Bye-bye.
Well done, guys.
To do another, am I going to go sit where Asma is now?